Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm going to get started even as I see a couple more folks rolling in, but I want to make sure we have enough time for a conversation today. For those who don't know me, I'm Mariah Brodas from the President's Office. Pleasure to have you all here with us for the second discussion in our series, Moving Dartmouth Forward. Today we're meeting with Inga Lisa-Muir and Mike Wooten, and they're going to be talking about housing solutions. For those of you who were with us for our first session on the D plan, you know how this works, but for those of you who are new, our goal here is to give Mike and Inga a few minutes to talk about things that are currently in progress, under discussion. They might have some questions for you, and then the idea is to really spend most of our time engaging you in your ideas, your thoughts on what would work, what would be helpful, what should we be focused on next. So, without further ado, and I want to make sure folks know that we are being videotaped today. This is not being live streamed, so in case you're chatting with people and they say, oh, I couldn't find it. It wasn't live streamed, but it'll be up on the President's Office webpage, most likely by tomorrow.
Thank you, Naraya. And thanks, Naraya, for organizing these discussions. Thank you very much for coming. I first just want to apologize. I have a cold, so that's why I have cough drops and Kleenex and water to get through the hour. Mike's going to do a lot of the talking today, but I wanted to just start by saying President Hanlon gave us an opportunity in the fall to take a look at housing for undergraduates at Dartmouth, which we were very excited about. And we've started, as you've probably seen the posters on campus, we're starting small and doing some pilots in the fall, and then hoping to look at the larger issue of upper class housing at Dartmouth in general. This meeting is hopefully for us to hear what you think about the housing issues in Dartmouth for undergraduates. And on that note, I'll turn it over.
Great. So I want to say thank you as well for being here. I know that there are a lot of probably great options you had for your lunch period on Mondays. So thank you for choosing us today. You had a lot of great choices, I imagine. Thank you there's a lot of faces in the room that have already been a part of this thinking, that have been guiding us since the fall in some ways. So I want to thank you in advance to folks who have played a role in helping us to conspire about how to be excellent, right? Which is the project in front of us at a place like Dartmouth, how to be excellent in all that we do. So I do want to add just a few points of context, talk a little bit deeper about some of the things that Inga mentioned as well, and then really it is about questions and feedback from you, and we've got 4 or 5 questions that we're going to work through. Does that sound good? So just for the sake, so that we know who's in the room, if you are a faculty member, could you put your hand up so I have a sense of who's faculty? Thank you. If you're a student, okay, so we got some students, some staff in the room. Okay.
Wow.
Perfect.
The staff have it.
So we're going to go out into the snow and reenact like Game of Thrones now. No. So if you're, just kidding, we're not going to do that. So again, thank you for being here. That gives us a sense of who's in the room and some of the perspective that we're working on here. So again, thank you. This piece about excellence. So let me just talk about that for a second. One of the things that Phil has reminded of us as we have entered this year in his new presidency, of course, and as he's been looking at different places in which there's opportunities to strengthen and deepen what we already do, is this idea of excellence. So on this piece, when we think about residential life and we think about many of the opportunities that we're trying to build, both in creating a more continuous housing experience for upper class students, and also deepening what is some opportunities for what we've called living learning communities. This is all because we are deeply desirous to be connected to the academic mission and the intellectual mission of this place. And in fact, our students expect it, and we should expect that of ourselves. And so that's one piece of context that I want to add, that guides how we and why we think about what we're thinking about. And in that, We often talk about this in residential life, and we talk about it in the Dean of the College area, that all four corners of the Dartmouth experience is a place that we should expect to be engaged with the learning project. Right? So all four corners, whether we're in the gym, whether we're in 53 Commons, and whether we're in the residence halls, we should expect, and our students expect, to be interfacing with what are the learning objectives and the academic intellectual mission of a place of this type of excellence. Okay, so that guides also some of the projects and some of the work that we're doing right now. And the final piece that I want to say is that we also know, and all of us in this room know this, is that knowledge is co-created. So learning and knowledge is co-created when we come together to do this. So when students, faculty, and staff come together, and we acknowledge the faculty, of course, are the experts in this side, but that knowledge is co-created. How we come together, where we come together, and how we imagine ourselves together is where knowledge happens. And so that's a deep motivator as well in how we are structuring and imagining the work in front of us for residential life and what the housing solutions could be in going forward at this place. Okay, so that's just a little bit of context. I wanted to add that. I think it matters to the work that we're doing. So let me dive a little bit deeper into the two projects, and then we're going to open up to questions and feedback and those sort of things. So we know at the college that we have a strong first-year residential experience. So the data is clear about that. Our students tell us that. That's the feedback that we get. Part of that is because our students live together for 3 terms, usually in the same room, in the same community for that experience. We also know from national literature and research that the first-year experience is very strong. So Phil has asked us, President Hanlon has asked us, to both deepen that experience, but to acknowledge that that's a strong experience, but then to work on providing more opportunities for our students to stay together post that first year experience. So I see some nodding heads, and you know what I'm talking about. Some of the feedback that we get from students is that they love what they experience in their first year, but feel a little scattered when they enter their sophomore year and above.
So since Mike and I've only been here for 4 years, and Mike's been here for 3. Since we've been here, students have been coming to us, student organizations, student groups, and saying the first year is a wonderful experience, but in the sophomore year, people feel very isolated. Is there something you can do about that? Go ahead, sorry.
Right, so one of the projects that we have that President Hanlon has asked us to do some work around is this idea of providing opportunities for our students to stay together in community with folks that they may have developed relationships with in their first year in a more continuous way for the remaining 3 years. This is similar to what a Yale would do, a Harvard would do. We are not those places, but we think there are some things we could learn from those experiences. And we do believe that our students knowing each other, knowing their neighbors, and developing community in a continuous way is an important project.
Right.
So one of the ways that we're imagining doing that is in creating a neighborhood system, okay? So that, again, you have a first year experience, you get to know your neighbors, that's a strong, we have a certain curriculum already embedded into that experience in the first year. And even in that first year, that you would be associated with a larger neighborhood that you would enter into as a community for the remaining 3 years. Okay, so that's the model that we're working with. Okay, so I'm not going to say too much more about that, again, for the sake of time. The second thing that we're doing that very much merges with this concept is this idea of living learning communities. And so for fall 2014, we have really 3 pilots, and pilot is a misnomer in some ways because I think they're beefy, substantial programs. So they're really new initiatives for fall 2014. One is called Global Village, and there's a number of folks in the room that have been in the working group for Global. Can you put your hand up if you've been a part of the Global Village working group? So there's a number of folks in the room that have been helping us co-conspire about what this should look like. That's bringing together some of the wonderful programs related to the international program. Steve Silver's program was here. Dickey's Great Issue Scholars, some language communities. Who else is? So you get the idea here. Some work from the Provost's office. Jay Davis's work related to language and motion and the King Scholar. These are all programs that we think will belong very nicely under this umbrella of Global Village. Okay, so that's one concept. The second one is an entrepreneurship program. There's a lot of energy and excitement around this idea at the college right now. Trip Davis's Innovation Center, the incubator. These are some wonderful opportunities for our students, and there are also some places that we think that we could deepen the residential life experience in co-partnering with these programs. Okay, so that'll be a new initiative for fall 2014. And then a third one is that we are, and you've seen some of the posters around campus, is this idea of a create your own type of design your own community where students can come together around a particular topic, something that they maybe encountered in their first year at the college. They're eager to deepen this with some friends of theirs. They can have some advising either from a faculty member or a different member of the community. And then they will live together in a continuous way for a number of terms to explore that topic in community. So it's a version of block housing. Some of those of you who have been here for more than a few years know that we've experimented with this a little bit. We're deepening that experience and trying to merge it with some of the more creative intellectual life that our students have already. And then the final thing that I want to say that's really important is that East Wheelock has always been a gem in our housing portfolio. We know this. It's a very unique experience for our students. It's a place where students can live for their first year through their senior year. It provides continuity. We also only want to deepen that experience and highlight what is already a unique thing for our students. So that's not going away, of course. It's only going to be deepened, and we're going to be extending that.
And then we also have affinity housing, and we see all of this as working together in our portfolio.
Yeah.
And just to add a couple more things about logistics. Last year, Dean Johnson sent us and some students to look at some of the best live-learn communities in the United States, University of Maryland, Michigan, NYU. But anyway, we learned a great deal from those visits, and so we're building on that also. All right.
Yeah. Sorry. So that's the end of sort of the boring part, right? Now you get to hear from each other. So what I do want to do is I really want to turn it over to you, and I've got some questions that I want to work through, and we're just going to work through those, and we want to get your feedback. We've got your thoughts on this. You'll see at the end of this that we've got some sign-up sheets, if you would, and if you're interested in continuing with us around this conversation, this dialogue, and continuing in offering your feedback, we'd love it if you'd leave your name. We'll also try to sell you some things. No, just kidding. But if you could leave your name, and we'd love to continue to give you updates on what we're doing and continue to gather your feedback, which is a really important thing for us to be doing in this stage of the development, which we're very early into the development of these programs.
Right. We also have a student advisory board that meets every week, but we're always looking for more students to join that. So if you're interested in doing that, please make a note on the sign-up sheet.
So here's my first question. So we think and talk a lot about residential life at Dartmouth, right? So this is a unique place. It's a 4-year residential experience. With that comes a lot of opportunity, a lot of amazing things. We think a lot about the integration of that place with the intellectual life of the college. We think that's an important thing, like I stated earlier. So with that stated, in your mind, what would the ideal residential experience look like for our students? Let's start there. What are your thoughts on that topic? Yeah.
Well, I think the question, my name's T, I'm a 15, a junior. I'm from Germany, but I don't know, regular 4-year student. The question you're asking is assuming sort of a homogeneity of the student population. And so an acknowledgement that whatever broad concept of residential life we come up with will not be tailored in one kind of particular way to everybody's needs, I think is something important that you already acknowledge in trying to draw living learning communities, etc. So I want to bring up a couple of points that I think are absolutely crucial to making the residential life at Dartmouth more just and decentralizing the experience of students who are already privileged in numerous ways in their lives. So something important to consider is that you do not only have 18 to 23-year-old students, right. You have students who have families, and they are usually living off campus, making their academic life a lot more difficult. And I want to challenge the notion that that's a small group, we don't need to think about that. These people are integral to the community. Same goes for gender nonconforming, agender, genderqueer, two-spirit, trans people who are fundamentally excluded from most of the housing on this campus. So I'm challenging, I am proposing, there need to be gender-neutral facilities that includes restrooms, locker rooms, housing, rooms that you share available everywhere. And then the last point I want to make is, I think it's incredible that you gave this whole long introduction without mentioning that so much of the social power within the residential system is being held by Greek houses that are fundamentally exclusionary in their financial practices of what you need to do to live there, and that also determine a lot of the components of residential life that aren't necessarily where do I sleep, right? It's where do I go in the evening, who do I hang out with, where can I go? Because a huge group, a huge constituent of your students knows that there are very many places on this campus where we cannot go unless we want to give up our body and gender self-determination, and that, which we don't have in many spaces on this campus anyway, unless we want to give up some of the rights that we know we have when we walk down the street. So I think a fundamental component of your project needs to be making residential life at Dartmouth more just. It is right now fundamentally unjust and exclusionary. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
So I want to say 3 things about that, and I really appreciate that you said that. First, this isn't to say we are opening Triangle House, and I'm very excited about it, but mostly I'm excited that students have been very involved in that, and I do think as an affinity house, we're trying to look at that in a different way from the way we've looked at our other affinity houses in bridging the academic and the social together. But that just creates another area, and I totally get that. Secondly, that's an excellent point about fraternities, and I just want to put on the table and be very frank. Mike and I spend a lot of time talking about fraternities and sororities on campus. One of the things that's exciting for us about this project is to reimagine other places. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't acknowledge it. You're absolutely right. But one of the things that got me very excited about this was that we were going to start looking at housing beyond that, and for students that might not find that as what they want as part of their Dartmouth experience. So I just wanted to explain.
Yep.
I just wanted to add one more point, piggyback on that if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind.
To Teresa's point, I think that, at least from my knowledge, in being on the working group for the Global Village, a key component, Teresa, and for everybody here, is to maintain a sense of community, if we can ultimately do that through allowing students to live in that Global Village, for example, for all 4 years, or to return to that
Right.
after an FSP or an LSA.
Right.
And in my humble opinion, that in part is where the strength of the Greek system lies at Dartmouth. It is a permanent community to which its members can return after being scattered all over. I'm not saying that's a bad or a good thing, it's just a reality here. And to have, to develop a well-developed, pardon the poor English, to have a well-developed sense of community in affinity housing in a Global Village or other examples might then enable more students to become active in their residence life, in other residence life options beyond the Greek system.
Right.
So does that make sense? I feel like I'm being very verbose here.
Can you just, the audience just asked if we could you guys introduce yourself? Could you introduce yourself?
Steve Silver, I work with international students
Thanks,
within
Steve.
the Office of Pluralism and Leadership.
Yes.
Roy Williams. I'm a first-year graduate student in the molecular and cellular biology program with a research emphasis in biophysics. Over the past 50 years, I've had an opportunity to be a student at 7 different universities and an administrative officer in 2. And the part that's relevant from that experience to here is that those campuses have included both state universities and a number of private liberal arts colleges. And those schools have had a variety of housing options, some very residential at the other extreme, schools that were composed primarily of working adults. One of the things that I noticed in those 7 schools is that the schools that had a strong Greek system, in every case, some of the underlying currents and traditions of that Greek system permeate the undergraduate community to an extent that, to my mind, is way more than we would want. I think that the Dartmouth affinity program offers, and I'm hearing some things you're thinking about that kind of go the same way. Anything that can bring students together with a common interest clearly has benefits across the whole campus. To move students away from, oh, what am I going to do tonight? I'm going to go to the fraternity house and get drunk, which is the bottom line. And I've seen that in every school I've been at where there's a Greek system. And the contrast is absolutely amazing. At the schools where I've been, where there's been no Greek system or a very weak system, that is not hovering in the near background. It's not the 800-pound gorilla in the room all of the time. I think if you can build the systems you're talking about and promote them, you will achieve what, at least for me and many of my classmates 50 years ago, made as a reason that we all ended up at Reed, where the policy was no fraternities, no sororities, no athletics. And there's a certain group of students that really like that. Now, I'm not suggesting that Dartmouth be like Reed, not per se. But I think it does give you a good long-term, and I'm talking maybe a generation or two, way to move the school in a direction that addresses the goals that President Hamlin wanted to move. So I hope that perspective gives you some background.
Thank you. So let's do maybe one more on this question, and then we've got a few others that we want to continue to work through. So I see a, yeah.
Kate, Center for Professional Development. As somebody who's worked at a number of different institutions, plus have a college-age kid myself, one thing that astounded me when I came here was when students would talk to me about how they don't spend time in their residential areas for social reasons. So, we do have the Greek system here and it's very strong. My question is, how much are people subscribing to the Greek system in order to A, create the community, B, have a social space? And so the question comes, are you going to also throw some money behind this to maybe create, they don't have to be massive social spaces, but the community kind of places where students can get together. A lot of other institutions I've been to have pods, right, where, actually physical pods to get students involved in, or living together and creating community that way.
Yeah. It's a great question. Let me, so we hear a lot and think a lot about social space on campus. Let me just start with one thought in that I actually don't think the term social space is a great category. I think that one of our challenges at this place is that and in fact it's encoded in our culture in a very particular way. So if you ask a student what social space means, and if you ask a faculty member or some other folks, they might tell you some different things about what their perception of social space is. So let me just start by saying, I actually don't think it's a great category. And I think I want to go back to this thought that I offered at the beginning, which is that this is a learning environment. So this is in which all 4 corners of the experience need to be contributing to the learning experience and acknowledging the learning experience that is happening. And so in that context, I think that when we say academics, social, and all the other ways in which we can categorize space, I get worried that we're not acknowledging the importance of this being a learning experience. Okay, so that would probably be my one. Now, with that said, I do think that our students, of course, need places and space in order to be fully them. to develop, to acknowledge, reflect on, and to deepen their personal and social identities, right? So that is something that we're thinking a lot about in how we understand neighborhoods, how we understand space in our buildings. But I think that the ultimate goal is always going to be to motion towards what is the intellectual strength and to deepen that in our community and to give our students opportunities to find themselves in that context. That to me is the project at hand. So, but with that said, I want to transition into the unless there are some burning thoughts on that, and Joanna's got a burning thought on this.
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
And perhaps I haven't been engaged enough, but the four corners. When you say the four corners, I don't know what those four corners
Yeah.
of.
What I mean by that is
Sorry.
simply, so this is from someone who thinks a lot about the design of our campus, so thank you, Joanna, for that. What I mean by that is simply all parts of the campus experience. So the classroom, the residence halls, the athletic field, including the off-campus travel opportunities. So all the things that would be the Dartmouth experience, if you want to put that in scare quotes.
Okay, so there's not just four.
No, it's not just four. No, there's not four pillars. You're trying to think of them.
No, that's a
Thank
good
you, thank you,
question.
Joanna. It's a great question. There are no four corners.
But can I just follow up on what Kate asked, and I agree with what you're saying, Mike, but also we are looking at the facilities. We have a discrepancy
Yep.
around facilities. You know, this is beautiful, right? This is wonderful, and I love coming down here and doing programs down here. And that is something that our group's looking at. Can we create more spaces where people can be more themselves
Yeah.
and comfortable? And we do need to do that, and it's an excellent point. Yeah.
So Jim has a burning answer to it.
I know that
You have to introduce
other
yourself,
points.
Jim.
Jim Alberghini, I'm with conferences and events. And first, I think that this is a great process to go through to try and improve this experience with what we have now. But I only want to follow up what you said, and I think that it's pretty obvious to, I think, most of the people here that we need new space.
Right.
And we need new space because I think that the D plan parts of that are so that we do have enough space for housing. So I think that you can't wait to go through that process of figuring out where the space is going to be, getting all the funding, getting all the approvals, and getting it built. So this process you're going through now is great. I also want to know, if not today, as we go forward, where are we heading to really, I think, provide the types of resources like common spaces, like spaces where people can feel at home and welcome. Because I think these are all really important points, and they're not necessarily being addressed right now in the fullness that they could be. So the solutions you're coming up with now, I think, are going to get us part of the way there, but we all know, right, that we need more space.
Right. So part of what we've been asked to do by President Hanlon, Dean Johnson, is to look at that specific issue and do really an inventory of what we need, get student input and faculty input on that, and over the next 6 months, right, we hope to have that finished. We've done that in some things, in projects that we've already been working on, but you're right, it's time to take a look at the whole for undergraduate housing and do that. So that is part of it, and then maybe we can do a follow-up about what we discuss. I mean, a lot of you who are in the spaces already know what we're going to discover, but I think it's time for us to do that inventory. Yeah.
And I think one of the fun things about that project is that we are, even here, we're trying to demonstrate the importance of integration in our system, right? So
Right.
Again, so what would a residential life experience look like that's integrated more fully in a physical plant perspective with, again, the mission? What would all parts of our campus, as we envision new space, different space, reimagined space, how do we serve the mission of the place and deepen what we are excellent at already?
Right.
I think that, and that's a project that takes time. It takes time to get the players at the table, to take all the different folks who have their own areas of expertise in this work. And President Hanlon is very sensitive to this and has asked us to be including all the moving parts of this as we do this examination, which is really important and been very helpful.
And one of the things we challenge the Triangle House Working Group to do is not just say this is a place for living when you're not in the classroom, but how can we have intellectually and socially vibrant things going on? So we need a classroom, we need a space where we can bring in, talks, where we can have book groups, where we can do things that are connected to the academic mission. So one of the exciting things about that new space is it's trying to do all of that, which is a little different from the way we've constructed our previous affinity houses.
So let me transition to the second question, which is, and this is really for our faculty and staff who do advising in the room. How can we empower, enable you to continue with what is the meaningful interactions you already have with our students? So again, this is one of the things that we care deeply about as well. How can we continue to empower you in the excellent work that you're doing in interacting and engaging our students in all sorts of ways, both in the classroom, but of course outside of the classroom as well?
I was actually almost going to ask you that question for the previous question. I'm Ryan Hickok. I'm assistant professor of physics and astronomy. One of the things I think that would possibly really help with this is if there is a restructure of the residential life to make the faculty affiliated with whatever the same communities that you're building for the students. I mean, it's something that in the institutions that I've been at before, there have been various, there have been strong undergraduate residential communities that all had common rooms of faculty that they could be associated with. And so if you saw a kid, you would say, that kid I'm on the same team as that student. Right? And we don't here. You have a faculty who are extraordinarily dedicated to teaching undergraduates. We're the best in the world at it. But at least when I arrived here, I thought, how do I interact with undergrads? There's really no way. There's no forum in which I can do this, and there's no way for me to be associated with it other than being in my class. And I know from all the students that I've talked to that they really would love to have more interaction with faculty. I mean, we have them over for dinner every once in a while, and they think it's worth raising effort. I would like to have dinner with undergrads a lot more often. And so I hope, I mentioned that might be the plan, but I would say that would be the number one thing.
Yeah. So if you don't know Ryan and Tammy, you should get to know them. And so from some of their first days on campus, they approached me to say, how do we help in further connecting with our students at this place in ways that are so this is the type of, this is why it's a wonderful place to work in many ways, to be at a place like Dartmouth, and that Ryan is so right to highlight our strength in undergraduate teaching and learning, right, and teaching, and that faculty are eager to be a part of this process. So thank you for those, and indeed, those are the types of things that we were very curious and interested in, both in the learning communities, which go deeper in a particular topic matter, but also just in how we structure the place. How do people have the chance to, what Jamie Coughlin uses this phrase, accelerated serendipity, right? Which is having places in which you have some accelerated serendipity around bumping up against folks that are different than you, that have something to offer to you, and that are in the classroom with you as well, right? So thank you for that. Other thoughts on this question? How do we enable you to deepen what you already do well in teaching and advising students? Yeah.
I'm Helen from the Tucker Foundation, and I work with faculty who do community-based learning. And to answer your last question and this one, I think an ideal residential community includes engagement with the larger community, either your neighborhood where service or engagement can happen, or your campus, or your larger community, and hopefully all of those in a thoughtful way. And so I would like to see that happen throughout communities, not just in living learning communities that are dedicated to that, because I think that can marginalize that activity. They do service over there. All communities could be doing service, so I think a partnership between Tucker and living learning communities to generate ideas about how to engage would be really exciting. And I think faculty who teach community-based learning courses could be situated in communities along certain themes, or teach in the right residential spaces. I could teach my course on gender and activism here in Fahey. I've hosted 3 conversations while I'm teaching this term here, but it hasn't been my hall. I don't know anybody in the hall. And if I were working with Fahey around a certain theme as well, that would deepen those connections, and we could have dinner together, and so I think on a social level that would work more. It would get more people engaged in my course themes. It would get more people engaged, period. I would know them when I see them in other parts of campus, and I think that deepens accountability for my behavior as well as theirs, where are you last Saturday night, Helen, whatever. So I think that would all be good, and I think, so community-based learning, service, engagement, all of those could really enliven the residential system, and it happens serendipitously now, but not in a systematic way. You know, we have UGAs who are Tucker student directors, and we have some cross-fertilization, so to speak, but not systematic collaboration.
Thank you. Maybe one more faculty on this, Lori.
Yeah, so I'm Lori Loeb. I'm faculty in computer science, and I'm the director of the Digital Arts Minor and the Digital Arts Leadership and Innovation Lab, the DALI Lab, which some of you may have heard of. So I have a couple thoughts. So one is, when you're designing a space to be creative, you put the bathrooms in the middle so that everybody has to interact with each other. So what is the thing that you can do where you can create those kinds of interactions? Right now we're all in these little pockets of space, and it's really hard. You know, you have to get out of your pocket and walk somewhere.
Sure.
So I think more central spaces where that happens would be great, where we have to go, right? Yeah. So how do you expand that? Literally. Design is huge. And, you know, and then the other piece is, so, you know, I created this lab with Newcomb money, not from the college, but, you know, with no support from the college, really. And it's this lab where students, art students and technology students come together and work on real world problems, right? So they do service projects, social justice projects type things, and research with faculty. So they're engaging with the faculty on their own research, many of them. So they're working with them every single week, building tools for them. It's incredible. So in 6 months, there's 60 students and a waiting list of 60 students. They love it. It's you know, they sleep there in the lab. They're not supposed to, but they do. So it's sort of a learning lab. But I think more things like that, because I just keep thinking of Terry Tempest Williams, who's been here many times, and she had a quote, "From creativity comes collaboration, and from collaboration comes community." And I think that if we're constantly thinking that we're going to give them more and talk at the students more, we're making a mistake. We've got to get the students doing the work, and we just help. We stand by and do what we can to
Co-learn, right?
We co-learn. Or we don't, you know, we just guide a little.
Thank you.
I think faculty would enjoy that.
So for the sake of time, let me flip it to students actually. So you tell us as well that you have deeply meaningful interactions with faculty and that you actually come here for that purpose. This is one of the reasons we talk a lot about these strengths, this strength in our community. So you come here for that. You expect it. You get it here. How can we deepen that for you as well, for the students in the room? The interactions that you have with faculty that might not only happen in the classroom. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. I currently live in an affinity house, the Chinese language house, that actually brings in a faculty member from a university, not only another university, but from another country. It allows us to practice the language. And I know other language affinity spaces don't have that luxury, and so they don't have as much practice with the language with someone who actually speaks it fluently as much as we do.
So this idea of living with the faculty member in your experience in the Chinese language house has been a deeply important part of both the language with the community building itself.
Yeah. And we also actually get funding to put on events, and other communities don't have that luxury either.
Programming money is very important. Yep. Thank you. Those are great examples.
Are there other students that can speak? Yeah, I see the hand.
So I'm a 13, and now I'm working as a presidential fellow in the provost office. My name's Amelia. I was just going to say that I think it's pretty common when you're talking to students who have gone on foreign study programs that their FSP professor is one of the closest professors that they get to at Dartmouth. And I think that that's because they're teaching a course and they're there during time that's not just in the classroom. And I think that most residential communities on campus lack someone like a professor advisor that you might have in an affinity house. And I think I've heard of other schools where you have faculty who are connected to floors or connected to residence halls or whatever, or there's just more engagement, and I think that that is kind of lacking and is a really good opportunity for creating student-faculty relationships that you might not get if you don't go on a foreign study program.
I'm Emily. I'm also a 13-minute presidential fellow at the Dartmouth Center for Healthcare Delivery Science. And in my experience as an undergrad, the only time that I met faculty members who weren't teachers in my classes was at my Greek house when we had a faculty dinner, and we never did anything like that in my residential cluster or in my building. And for me, residential life wasn't really an experience, it was just housing.
Right.
I did my laundry there and I slept there, and there really wasn't anything else to it. So I agree with Amelia that having faculty members present in some capacity that wasn't even necessarily direct advising would be a great way to build that community and those relationships between students and professors.
Thank you.
Chris in the back.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm an admissions officer, but when I was a student, and I'm an alum, when I was a student, I had the opportunity to go with Mike and Inga to a couple other universities and schools to look at their residential life and learning, living community models. And I had similar experiences as Amelia and Emily described, but something that I thought might be interesting, just by way of a suggestion, or something that we sort of took from other institutions that seems to be somewhat successful, is, and sort of going back to the point about creativity, is I think a more creative use of some of the communal spaces that we already have. And thinking back to, in Michigan, I can't remember where they use some of their residence hall community spaces, not just for a lecture or for a class seminar or discussion, but in some of their newer residential buildings or the newly renovated ones, they've added things like ceramic studio or not a computer lab that's so outdated, but like some sort of digital learning space. And that, so it wasn't necessarily your class was held there every time, but your class sometimes would do relevant workshops or sort of supplemental pieces in the residence hall. And then you'd often see the faculty members around there. And then thinking also about offices too, faculty members who are advising students in those communities had an office, or if not either their only office or one of their offices in a residence hall, and so they were there more often. And then I think it also helped students treat the space better, because it was, I'm sure people who work in housing and residential operations can attest to the stress of Sundays and Mondays when you realize what happened over the weekends. Yeah. And I think students sort of viewed their residence hall as a more sort of sacrosanct space when there's faculty member offices and nice stuff there, whether it was a studio or a lab or something like that. I think the other piece is to avoid looking at faculty living in the residence hall as a silver bullet. I know when we went to Columbia, and they're probably in the same spot as us in terms of how far along they are in developing these programs, they had tried having faculty live in the residence halls, and I think it's really expensive, but more so than that, it was sort of almost it was a symbolic gesture, but didn't actually come with any deep sense of interaction between the faculty member and student. And obviously that depends on the person, but that's something I think is maybe a natural inclination to think is a sort of magic bullet to this problem, but maybe is, I think some creativity with what we already have could go a long way before doing that.
So for the sake of,
I'm Paul, I'm 17. Kind of going off of what's been said, kind of, as a 17 and relating to last term and this term, I've met 6 professors, and you kind of get a sunken feeling that there's just not that interaction. But the point that I wanted to make kind of was, I live in River Cluster, and it's much different than here. And my whole point is, River Cluster, I leave probably at 8 a.m. Don't come back until way night, because I kind of see it more as just a place to sleep other than live. And yesterday it was kind of ironic. I went up to the 3rd floor of Fayette McLean, and I noticed that they had their own floor study space, and they kind of just you kind of get this sunken feeling, and it's just I feel like the inconsistency in kind of the facilities, and there's only so much you guys can do about that. So it's not kind of me complaining about how our showers aren't as great. It's just that there's no space. There's just you can't have community if there's no space for it to foster, and I think that's something that needs to be highlighted. And what I've noticed is my floor and my floor compared to other floors, it's not a community. And you look at the floors in Fay McLean, you look at the floors in Wheelock, and you look at the floors in McLaughlin, and they're actually floors. They have floor dinners, and they have different things together. And our floor just isn't a thing. Like yesterday, I was at another floor's floor dinner because I live there more than I live on my floor, and I just feel like it's something that we do have to address, because when there isn't that social space, people are going to be forced to find other social spaces that aren't as healthy. So.
Right, that's a really good point.
So just for the sake of time, I want to transition to our final question, and I know that many of you have to.
About 5 more minutes.
Yeah, maybe about 5 minutes, and I want to just pose this question. And again, one of the nice things about you putting your name down and or just sending us feedback, which will first send you a message, and then you could give us all the things that you couldn't quite say to the group. We'd love to continue to get your feedback. But this final question that I'd like to ask is, so we've talked a lot about deepening the intellectual experience, but are there other things that would create an anchor or a glue, if you will, to a neighborhood system that you would get to know your neighbors in new and fresh ways if we embedded it with? So if we created some neighborhoods, and what would be what are the ingredients of that neighborhood that would help in fostering deeper communities? Art
and creativity, because, and I say that with social justice in mind, because learning through art is so generative and so forgiving and so inviting, and creative thinking is something we need to be doing in whatever our field of study is.
Especially liberal arts.
Right.
Food, right? Meaning, and we've talked about this, it's very expensive to have dining halls in clusters, totally.
Yeah.
But and when Ryan and I came from Harvard and Yale, and we had residential colleges that had their own dining halls, and I appreciate that you can't do that everywhere, and that we're not those places. But even how many conversations I had with graduate students or faculty members or other students who I wouldn't otherwise come into contact with, they were totally different from me, right? Over cereal at 2 in the morning in the dining hall, right? Even just to have the space and something and a study space in the middle of the night creates a lot of community, because it's ties you to the stuff.
So Esteban in the back there.
Esteban, I'm 14. A couple rapid fire suggestions on that point. So food, totally agree with. You have like the FSP thought that was brought up. A lot of the reason why you're close with the FSP props is because you have conversation with them over food. So I don't know if you can like incentivize faculty to go to the dining halls, like faculty night on Wednesday at 53 Commons. I don't know what like gets faculty motivated, but whatever the magic candy is, offer that. So that's what the other kind of topic is outdoors. So we're at Dartmouth. We have an amazing resources. A lot of the greatest community I've gone through the outdoors. Whether that's like ropes program for in the first or second week, all your floor does the ropes program. Whether it's PE classes are subsidized if your whole floor does it. I don't know. But there's certainly ways, like if your whole floor was getting together to go whitewater kayaking or to go rock climbing, that certainly bridge community outside of getting drunk together on a Friday night.
Right.
And just a quick plug for some of Esteban's amazing work. He is with a group of people, been very much invested and interested in improving this place, as any student, of course, many of you are. And what's the name of your webpage again, Esteban? Yes, maybe you've seen it. This is his project. So this is another place that would be really important for you to suggest some things and be a part of a community that's interested in solutions. So thank you for that work as well. So maybe just a few other comments before we transition out. Nancy.
I just wanted to pick up on what Tammy said, because I've had some conversation with prospective students and their parents when I kind of try to share how we're improving this. Where is the random coming into someone you would never have met?
Right.
We so cluster around affinity. We so cluster around like-mindedness. How are we providing those opportunities where I would have never met you had I not had food and been in a dorm randomly assigned over 4 years? So that's just really good point.
Francine.
Well, I just want to speak directly to what Nancy said really important that whatever communities, small or large, that we're creating around affinity or shared interests, that those same spaces that feel like community for the people who live there become destinations for other people on campus. Because otherwise we're just creating random pockets of more exclusivity where, and especially if people are living there continuously over 4 years, then we need to find a way to bring other people in. So Triangle House is fantastic, but how are we going to get people who are not necessarily directly or feel an affinity to Triangle House right now? How are we going to get people going into Triangle House and experiencing all the wonderful opportunities?
Right. In some fun ways, this is the same project of democracy, right? I mean, so both supporting individual groups, acknowledging the importance of the greater experience in community. So we think a lot about this. It's great. So thank you for bringing that up.
So, it goes back to art. So if these spaces are doing art or projects or something that they're bringing in, fun speakers, that it's open.
Yeah. Right. It's very good.
I'm sorry to do this. I know there's hands up, but Naraya's wanted to say a few closing things. And
you're about 5 minutes up. Do you want to take like 2?
Sure.
2 more questions?
That'd be great.
2 or 3 more.
Okay.
Great. Yeah.
Right.
So maybe someone who hasn't spoken yet. Anyone who hasn't spoken yet who's got their hand up?
Yeah, Roger.
Well, I just want to commend you both, and also the committee and all the folks that you've worked in. This is very topical. I think it's extremely timely for Dartmouth to be going in this direction. If we look at the next generation of the younger millennials coming into colleges and universities and American institutions of higher ed, they're already being referred to as plurals, right? So they're much more pluralistic than our current students. And so they have a higher degree of belongingness to needs on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And when you think of that, and you think about citizenship at Dartmouth, I think you'll see a positive correlation because young people will consubstantiate with these affinities, with these learning and living communities, and that could have a positive correlation to responsibility and accountability, citizenship to Dartmouth. So I commend you on this. It's a great opportunity, a rate, right? Excellent. So good job.
Thanks, Roger.
Is there any?
Maybe Brian Reed in the back?
On the way back?
Brian Reed, Undergraduate Dean's Office. I just wanted to, I think as we involve students in the formation of these, I think other ways to, I've had these conversations with Mike and Jeff before, but ongoing opportunities to be involved in governance of these places.
Right, exactly.
And so that voices are continually heard, that the democratic process is continually involved in the policies, the functions, and what from soup to nuts with these facilities. And two, enticements in terms of getting faculty, maybe buying courses out from individual faculty to entice them to come into the residence hall, sort of like a grant program where we buy a course out for them to be able to come in and participate in the hall.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Naraya?
Sorry. Maybe Steve, one last one.
Very quick point to consider, and Mike and I and our committee have talked about this a little bit, consider having graduate students
Yes,
live.
absolutely. And we're really
real involvement.
supporting that idea. I think it's really important. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to thank everybody, and particularly Mike and Inga, for giving up their lunch hour to be with us here today. A couple of reminders. So we are partnering with ImproveDartmouth.com. So some of the questions you heard today, we posted there. So if you'd like to submit more feedback, more ideas, or if you want to encourage others to share their ideas, please direct them there. You can also always email the President's Office at president'soffice@dartmouth.edu. The video for today's session and all of the sessions will be posted on the President's Office webpage under Moving Dartmouth Forward. Give us a day or so to get it up there, but it will be posted there. And just a reminder about our upcoming sessions. So more is being added to the schedule, but we do know our next session is March 3rd. It's on digital learning initiatives. And that's with Alan Cartier and Joshua Kim. And then coming up when we're back after the break in spring term, professional development and career planning with Dan Parrish from Dartmouth for Life, Human Relations, and Roger. Arts and Innovation, Tripp Davis and Adrian Randolph. Global Learning Program. So for those who don't know, FSPs came up a number of times today. We're looking at both FSPs, LSAs, how we can in general open up our global learning programs across campus. What's the newest iteration of that? So Lynn Higgins and Lindsay Whaley will be presenting on that in May. So if you have questions on any of that, or you're looking for what's up next, just go to the President's Office webpage, and I hope to see you for another one of these soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody.